What's up, boys? Callsign Grimey here. We are back in Broken Arrow. This is a very exciting game that a lot of people are waiting to officially come out. Now, I've created content around this game, probably arguably one of the earliest creators to cover it way back when it had its first open beta. I've been part of the closed beta before that, and I've been in and out of those closed and open betas since then. I've covered it in quite a few videos on the channel way back when. Some of that, a lot of it, I would say, probably information in those videos might be outdated because as they continue to refine the game, add things in, and so on and so forth, a lot of that content is outdated. So here we are with the latest open beta as of November of 2024. I'm excited about this. Now, I know that there are a lot of people like myself who are just now getting into RTS games. I've never really played RTS games prior to discovering Broken Arrow, and it won me over. I love this game, and I am excited about it finally coming out. When it does, as they continue to flush things out, I really think that Slytherin is doing a good job at communicating with the community, with doing these open and closed betas to refine it and have it ready to go at launch as best as possible. Now, will the game be perfect at launch? No, of course not. But I love that they are putting the effort in to dial it in while giving people a chance to play it and get excited about it. Now, with that being said, in today's video, I want to walk through and talk about building your decks. There's going to be creators out here, especially those creators that are super hyper focused on RTS games. They're OGs in the RTS space and creating and gaming and all that stuff. They're going to present a lot of decks for you to do that are like min-max, you know, have the metas and all that stuff. And sure, you can do that, but what I want to present to you today is building just a well-rounded starting deck just to get started. And for those of you that are like me that are getting into RTSs for the first time, it can be overwhelming, overcomplicated. So let's just start at a base level here that's going to get you with a good setup to go into any battle and have some fun. And as you get comfortable and build yourself into the RTS space and understanding it, how it works, the dynamics of it all, then you can start tweaking the deck to build it out into the kind of play style that you want. So here we are. We're going to start with the American Forces and the USMC. Semper Fi to all my devil dogs out there across the world. All right, let's start here. You'll see on my listing here, Recon, Infantry, Vehicle Support, Helis, and Air. You have an allocation of points. That means that within these, you can build up your squad within that segment to that maximum point there. That way it keeps you in a certain check there. My belief here, first and foremost, is to squeeze every point possible out of here to hit that max. Okay, and if you'll see here, for the most part, almost every one of my categories is right there. It's either on spot on or just a few points short. So I really try to maximize that. Let's dive into here for Recon. Now we took a look at the Recon forces here. What I've selected, 4 Force Recon units are a part of this category, and they have 3 LAVs. One team doesn't. And I can always, and we'll cover this more when you have other vehicles, support vehicles, I can also dump them into other vehicles to transport them to the front lines if necessary. But in order to get the full squeeze out of the points allocation for reconnaissance, I went with a 4 and a 3 for my Force Recons here. Next, Scout Snipers can be very valuable. Really like utilizing these guys. Obviously, you want to put them off on the flanks. They kind of cover, give you some eyes and further in to enemy territory and such. I went with 2 LAVs to help get them to the forward front lines as fast as possible, and that was pretty clear cut there. And then to round it out, I have 2 sets of Humvees, the LRA S3 and the RWS. I picked them because they're low cost units. I was able to pick up quite a few of them, so I got 4 of the RWSs, I got 2 of the LRA S3. And also, I believe I upgraded the weapon package on the LRA S3. Yeah, I picked the grenade launcher on this guy, so you can tweak it out a little bit. But I chose these units over the other options here, which are going to be like your drones, simply because the drones are much more expensive, significantly more expensive, and I just tend to see that drones get shot out of the air pretty quickly. So for the spend versus, you know, what happens on the battlefield, I would rather have the ground units here that I can use in some form or fashion to set up around the map wherever I may need them to be and whatnot. And that's going to round out my Recon set. All right, we're in the Infantry tab here, so let's talk about Infantry. This is your bread and butter out of your ground forces here. All right, so first we've got obviously the Marines. All right, you got your platoon here. We got 4 sets of Marines and 4 LAVs to go with them as well. I'm going to go ahead and match however many units of platoons of Marines and the vehicles together. That way I can get them right to the front lines as fast as possible. So I always recommend matching your platoons, vehicles with the platoon numbers so that you can call them in and deploy them immediately. Next, very, very valuable to me, this is a big part of my strategy, are the Stinger teams. Now, ideally, I would love to have a lot more, but if we're talking about trying to min-maxing and getting the best squeeze out of your total points for each category, you're going to go with 2. I recommend 2, and you're going to have these Humvees as well. Again, these guys, you want to deploy them up to the front or wherever you need them to be as fast as possible. Throw them in the Humvees, transport them, and call them into whatever area you need them to set up in, and call it a day. They're not, exactly cheap, but they are worthwhile, and they're very, very helpful for enemy aircraft, helicopters, and fast movers as well. Next here, the tow team. Another, again, you have the Stinger team here working on the air units, and then you have your tow team working on those ground units that are in the way, setting these guys up at choke points and other positions like high buildings that overlook roadways or pathways. Choke points is also a good strategy to deploy them in. Same concept here. I'm running with two units of these guys and having them in the Humvee to transport them as quickly as possible to wherever I need them to deploy. Next, we're going into the weapon squad. 2 sets of these guys. They're not cheap. They're 130. They cost 130. So you got to be very careful and make sure you're calling them in and utilizing them in the right space to get the best bang for your buck here. Also going to throw them in vehicles as well to transport them to wherever you need them to be. So essentially the Stinger, the tow, and the weapon squads, all kind of the same concept with all of them, and 2 sets for each one of these. Gives you a nice little mixture to set them up so you can deploy your Marines to, say, whatever position, and you can get a Stinger team, a tow team, and a weapon squad to come up and support them and set them up in this particular area or an objective that you're trying to hold and or take, or say a choke point you're trying to cut off enemy forces from advancing through. So right there, nice little mixture of units. Next, we have the Marine Raiders. Love these guys. These guys really good. Again, they aren't cheap. I like them a lot, and we're going to have them in the AAVs here for transportation, so you can do amphibious stuff, crossing rivers with these guys and transport them over there. Again, because of the number capacity here of 1750, you can only take 2 of these guys. In fact, you can only take 2, period. So it works out well that you're able to take the max out of these units for the Marine Raiders and bring them along with. And in this case, you can only really go with 1 AAV because of the cost here. And that's fine because, again, we have other assets that we can utilize to transport these Marine Raiders. And we'll get to those as we get into some of the other categories. Finally, we have a tow team here as well. One of these units, and they have their own vehicle to transport them as well. Again, these are kind of expensive at 100 for the cost, but you have them to help with your enemy ground forces, vehicles, and such like that. So deploying these, being really strategic on where you put them at so you get the most value out of them on the field is also important. But if you look at it, we managed to have what I believe a good, well-rounded, balanced segment of infantry troops here that can do a lot of work at holding positions, advancing positions, defending, and so on and so forth. You get units to the front line as quick as possible with the vehicles to support them. And for the ones that don't have vehicles to support them, we'll get into what we can do for them here in a minute. But you'll see here we capped out at 1750, which is the max for this. So that works out really, really well. Next, let's get into the vehicles. These are going to be your ground units, mechanized units here that you have access to support you in your operation. So here I've got 4 of the M55 A1s. These guys, for the cost here, they're going to be your lowest cost tanks available at only 80. So rack up on those guys. I would rather have numbers on the field than having to pay top price for just a few tanks. I would rather have more that I can sprinkle around the battlefield, and that's why I leaned heavy into the M55 tank here. Next, the M60. Again, It's a bit more pricey. I was able to get 4 units out of this, and that helps again because now I have 8 total units up to this point of tanks that I can deploy in various ways on the battlefield. And again, I want to, as much as possible, flood the enemy with total numbers of vehicles and troops as possible, while not going broke in the process. One of the biggest struggles I see for new players to Broken Arrow is that they go broke pretty quickly because they're adding the most expensive assets to their deck, and then they're struggling because they don't have the points to call them out. Next, we've got the LAV ATM. This vehicle right here, I also did upgrade here and added the modernized section here, so it does bring up the value. Without this, it comes down to a 60 cost, but I do like having the modernized version of it just for more firepower. So that I felt like the 85 total price for this with the upgrade weapon system was worth it. Got 2 of these guys, and again, being strategic on where you place these is going to help. Next, we've got a couple of tow Humvees. Again, putting these in areas where are kind of off the beaten path, can catch enemy vehicles off guard and those blast them to hell. And for only 45 costs, I think it's very reasonable. I was able to get 3 of these. Finally, we have the M1A1. I mean, what can we say about this historic, legendary tank right here? They are very expensive, extremely expensive, which is why I was only able to get 2 on the deck. But that's 2 that are going to be very powerful, and it's going to be very helpful. And utilizing them in the proper way, you know, it's going to really help out a lot. And when you're, I like these guys especially in defensive situations, defending an objective, putting them in a strategic spot around an objective, and holding that area. Slows down the enemy advances. You get a couple of tow teams around them, and man, they can just wreak destruction defensively as well. Now, of course, you can use them for offensive stuff, but I particularly don't like that because you're running this unit that costs 205 points straight in, face checking enemies. You end up wasting it. So I personally like strategically, and again, that's the beauty about this game, is you can utilize these assets in whatever way fits your strategy, right? Me, with this guy, I'm looking at costs and such. I like to use these M1A1s more defensively to defend positions that we're holding. Let's get out of here. Oh, well, before I do, you'll see here for the vehicle, I mean, we're just 5 points away from hitting that max 1500. So a good assortment of vehicles in all. We have 8, 10, 15 total, ground vehicles at our disposal. Okay, now let's move into the support vehicles here. You have a wide range of various support vehicles at your disposal. I managed to get this to hit exactly at 1500, which is the cap. Now, let me walk you through what I've selected here. First, we've got the slam rams. All right, these guys are going to be your defensive shield. You know, think of like the air dome to Summer Guard here, but these guys are going to launch those MRAMs from the ground into the sky to take down enemy air. Very, very useful, putting them off to the sides or somewhere in some tree lines where they're not going to be easily visible, and they'll take down some enemy air. So a great tool to use. They are expensive at 130 points. I managed to get 2 sets of these, and I think 2 is just fine. Okay, next we have the Hawkeye MWS. It's basically an artillery on a truck. Very mobile. You can move it around very quickly. I like it because you can kind of be sneaky with this thing. You can drop it, set it into place, have it launch, and then pick it up and move it out of the area before enemy forces dial in your location. So that's why I like to use these guys. At 80 costs, fairly reasonable for what it can do. We were able to pack in 4 of these units into our deck. One of my favorites, man. I've liked this vehicle from the very beginning of the closed beta when I first started with Broken Arrow, but the LAV M, the motor edition of this guy, very, very useful. Setting this up here again at a cost of 80, doesn't break the bank, not exactly cheap either, But for what it provides, love using it. You've got the smoke you can use. You've got the high explosive rounds you can use. You can launch stuff over there. Very useful. Again, putting it into place just on the back line a little bit, away from the front lines to support those front lines. It's great use for that guy, but we got 2 of those. All right, next we have the Brutus artillery system. Again, it's another artillery on wheels, similar to the MWS. However, this one packs a bigger punch at 155 millimeter high explosive rounds on it. And the range is going to be significantly longer. It can go out to 3,800 meters compared to the 3,200 meters from the MWS. So you can stretch this off and keep this guy back a little bit further in your back line, a little bit more protected, if you will. However, once enemies kind of dial in where that artillery rounds are coming from, you need to pick this thing up and get it out of the way. So being on wheels allows you to kind of do that and hopefully prevent it from being blown up right after you've launched on enemy positions. We were able to get 2 of these units as well. All right, next we've got the Lav AD here. This guy has some stingers on board, so I like this because it just adds another set of firepower that in your support vehicle elements here to divvy it all up. So everything has a little bit something different to offer to support you in the various ways that you need it to be. Now, the thing with the Lav AD is that it is a very expensive unit at 140 costs per unit. So be mindful of when you're going to call this guy out and how you're going to deploy it so that you can get the best bang for your buck and it will do the damage you need it to do before it gets taken out. Next, we've got the LVSR. Essentially, this is just a supply truck. We've got 2 of these guys on here. And then finally, we've got the Avenger system here. I like this because, again, it's not super expensive, not super cheap, kind of middle of the road at 90 cost. But those Avengers are really going to help as well, as you got more Stinger missiles on board to deal with, targets and such. So very, very useful how you want to deploy these as well. And then again, the great thing about all of these vehicles here is that it puts you right at exactly the 1,500 points cap for your support vehicles. So it works out well. All right, let's talk about the helis. We have a variety of helicopters to pick from. I managed to get it within 20 points of the total max of 1750. So I think this is a pretty good loadout here. Middle of the ground gives you a wide range of helicopters to utilize. First, you've got the Chinook here. You want to transport troops. You need to sling load something. This thing is going to allow you to do all of that very, very effectively as well. We managed to get 2 units as part of this. They are expensive at 140 total cost. We also have the Viper. These guys are pretty damn good on the battlefield with its firepower here. I did upgrade these, and I have the Hellfire missiles on board on the inner pylons. I also added the 38 guided rockets, APKWSs, on here to the outer pylons. And then on the wingtips, we've got a set of sidearms as well. So this thing is really packed up, upgraded. So it's super expensive at 280 total cost. I managed to get 2 of these guys. Deploying these and how you deploy them is going to be key to get the most out of them before they get shot down. Be mindful of that because they are expensive, and there's nothing worse than calling it into the battlefield and immediately getting shot down before you even deployed weapon systems. Moving along, we've got 2 sets of Ospreys here at a cost of 150. These guys are going to be great at transporting troops and transporting items, sling loading. So again, when we talked about earlier about our infantry and our recon units that don't have vehicles to transport them, that's fine because we have the helis between the Chinook and the Osprey that can load them up and take them to where you need them to go. So don't always stress about having the vehicles. You also have your air assets that can transport your troops where you need them to go. Next, we have the longbow. All right, the Apache. This is super expensive, and I also upgraded. So they have Hellfires on both sides of the aircraft. All right, next we have the H-64D, my favorite, the Apache Longbow Edition here. This guy has been fully upgraded, so it's super expensive. I've added Hellfires to all the pylons, inner and outer, on both sides of the aircraft. So, we've got like 16 rounds of Hellfires to unleash, provided we don't get shut down before that is deployed. But that boosted up the price to 330. So This here, this is kind of like one of those where I splurged out a little bit, but knowing what these Hellfires can do, if you deploy this in the right way, this can really make it a bad day for the enemy forces. So we've got one of these guys. Then finally, the Super Stallion. One of my favorite helicopters. Remember this distinctively on the airfield in Miramar during my time in the Marine Corps, seeing the Super Stallion. This thing's a beast. You want to talk about sling loading and passenger capacity? You can hold up to 30 units of infantry into it, and you can take a whole lot of people to a whole lot of different places with this beast, as well as sling loading. It can carry quite a heavy amount of stuff, sling loading here. So great option here for transporting at a cost of 130. It's a little bit on the pricier side. You got two of these units as well. And again, with these aircraft, which give you firepower and which give you transport capabilities, we're right at that cap, damn near 20 points away from that 1750. All right, finally, let's talk about our air assets right here. First, starting with the Harrier 2 Plus, one of my favorite aircraft, the Flying DCS. Here it is in Broken Arrow. I did modify its loadout here, so it is a little bit higher of a cost than what it would be with the base loadout. But we've got designation pod on it. We've got GPU 55s on board, 1,000-pounders. We've got Mavericks on board. We've got two AMRAAMs. Nice, mixture assortment on it to handle a variety of mission taskings that we call it in here, and that raises the price of this unit to 280. So we're able to get two Harriers in our deck for our air support. Moving along, the Hornet here, another one of my favorite aircraft. This guy is super expensive at 385. We've also tweaked out its loadout, which is making it expensive. But for my aircraft, I'm going to splurge a little bit more because I want that air superiority. I want the firepower. Calling in your air units at the right time can really do a lot to mess up the enemy's plans. Obviously, take out a bunch of its units there. So my philosophy is I'd rather spend on having the armament so that I can accomplish those objectives. So as far as what we have on it, on the fuselage, we've got AMRAAMs on board, we've got GPU 54 500-pounders on board, and we've got some AGM 84 slammers onboarded as well. Next, we have the legendary F-15E Strike Eagle. This guy is a beast. Now, let's talk about his loadout here. It is super expensive, by the way, at 455 for the cost. I managed to get two of these in here. But look, I want to talk a moment here about why I chose the loadout on this aircraft, especially compared to what I put on board the Hornet and the Harrier, where those aircraft have more of a mixture of weapon systems on board. I specifically went with the F-15 Strike Eagle with cluster bombs on here to separate it from these other aircraft. I'm looking at using the F-15E Strike Eagle here for laying waste to enemy-held objectives. I'm looking to fly in and essentially just cluster bomb them to hell to wipe out as many units that are sitting within an objective zone. And that's why I decided to go with those cluster bombs to drop on those areas and try and eliminate as many of those enemy forces within the objective area that's holding in there. And so that's why it's different than having the AMRAAMs and the GBUs on the Hornet and the Harrier as well. Next, we're going to go in and take one more aircraft, not an attack jet. I think we have enough of those between the Harrier, the Hornet, and the Eagle. We have 6 attack aircraft at our disposal. The final one we're going to take is the Hercules here. And that's just because it allows us to just, one, transport items, and secondly, you can hold up to like 92 infantry units on there. You can do a lot with these guys, and it just allows you to deploy those units pretty fast and quickly. So we added the Hercules there, and it's also part of it is the fact that I just think these are going to be more effective in using something like this than some of the other aircraft in here. Like, you could go with the Prowler for the intelligence aspect of it all, perhaps, but I would rather have access to drop-in troops wherever I need them to be. And I think this is just a good aircraft to have in your deck overall. And finally, you'll see here that with all these aircraft here, we managed to just end up about 60 points shy of maxing out our air units here at 2,500. We hit it at 2,440. When you look at everything, when it's all said and done, if you look at the entire deck here, I believe that this is a good, well-rounded deck here to get anyone started into Broken Arrow. You can obviously go back in here and refine this stuff if you want to approach your gameplay experience from more of a tactical stealth. Then of course you can go in here and adjust your recon units, you can adjust your infantry units. If you want to be the member on your team that focuses on a certain thing, then of course you can go in here and select those units that are going to help you accomplish that thing, whatever it may be. You know, for example, if you want to be the one that's focuses on your defenses, then you're going to want to pick other assets in here, maybe lean more into the toes and the stingers and max those guys out while dropping down your infantry units, because you're going to be the one responsible for deploying defensive assets on the battlefield. You might have another teammate that deck is more focused on offensive attacking, and they're going to load up on, you know, full units of infantry, full units of force recon. They're going to have certain vehicles that are going to allow them to move quickly into the front line. So that's when you get into the intricacies of it. If you start to play this game with a team, then I think that behooves you to create those kinds of specialized decks. But if you're a solo player, there's nothing wrong with going with a middle of the road, good, well-rounded deck that allows you to have access to a wide range of units to play them as you see fit in your matches. So that's my suggestion. Of course, this is not by any means the gospel and the end-all be-all here. There's many different ways to create your deck, but I just wanted to show you the way that I've done it and the way that I'd recommend somebody that's new to Broken Arrow to consider and help get you in the right path. And as you play the game yourself, you'll start to refine things and tweak out your deck to fit your kind of play style. All right, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you want more of this kind of content, I cover flight sim, DCS, mil sim, tactical shooter gameplay. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel. Callsign Grimey out.